Hi y'all, welcome back to Flo's World. For today's video, I want to talk about what it means to trust yourself. And for me, I'm one of those people who, what'd you call it? People where when I'm talking about stuff, like I do like focusing on the topic that we're talking about, but I'm somebody who likes to dig deeper in understanding kind of like the fundamental ideologies that govern or structure the beliefs and the topics that we're talking about. So I will give some pointers and stuff about why it is important to trust yourself, but also go deeper into like what cultivates these things within us, you know. And part of why I like to take this approach is because we can have conversations about a topic for as long as we can, but I'm somebody who likes to leave conversations or environments feeling empowered and not like in a state of victimhood. And part of my way of doing that is focusing on the root causes of these issues and these things that are happening in our lives, because we aren't the ones who are doing it to ourselves, but we can be a victim of it. But how do we empower ourselves to see the situation differently, where we don't walk around as like as a person who's saying like, oh, these things happened to me and I'm never gonna get out of it, when really it's like you can, but let's understand it in a way and in a framework where we're able to see the bigger picture and we're not just victimizing ourselves. So that's what I mean. So when it comes to the whole topic of like trusting yourself, I will say for me, like as somebody who was always very intuitive and like had a great knowing within themselves and uses that now as a way to guide and sense and feel out the world, I will say I wasn't always this person, you know, and I didn't always possess the qualities that I do have now or view myself in the ways that I do now in relationship to other people in the world. And when we kind of like take it back a little bit, one of the things that I do want to focus on in the early parts of this series or this episode is what contributes to us not trusting ourselves, you know? Because for me, it's not like we just wake up. I believe, you know, when children are born and we are young people, we have the greatest knowing of ourselves, and the capacity that we trust ourselves to is so like infinite and great that it can't even be measured. And to like a child's mind, you can literally present them with anything and they have this fundamental belief that it is possible because they trust in themselves, and that trust within themselves hasn't been like bruised or misused or mishandled within them, for them to see their own internal power and their self-trust within themselves as something that hasn't been broken yet. And they're able to move from this place of like fully trusting in that and moving according to that, that allows them to have the success that they do in whatever endeavor that they do take in that present moment. That's why you have kids like who would be like, oh, can I try that? And they're able to like right away mimic or do what you were doing. But that's because there's that full trust, like I could do this. But over time, there's stuff that happen in our lives and things that we experience that hinder our capacity to trust ourselves. And for me, in this part, or anybody that's really struggling with this area in their life, or maybe is at the realization where they're like, you know what, I would really love to trust myself, but I can't, and that has been broken. I do want to like empathize with that, you know, because the society breeds people and conditions them and socializes them in a way where they're not really taught to trust themselves. And being able to trust yourself later on in life becomes a skill set that like you literally have to learn and practice every single day to get better at. Can you imagine something that was innately given to us gets robbed from us, and then we have to do all of this work back to reclaim these things for ourselves? Tremendous. And I will say this, like, as somebody who now is at places in their life where they have deeper understanding within themselves, where they trust themselves at great lengths and have that capability within them, I will say I was not always where I am at now. And there's definitely a lot of what's it called? Situations that made me become aware that like, damn, I don't really trust myself. Okay, so going back to what I was talking about of like, it is important to talk about the first places in your life that cause these things. For me, that's important because I'm not going to just sit around and point out the flaws within myself without acknowledging the people, places, and things that caused it, that enabled it, you know? Because at the end of the day, who wakes up and be like, you know what? I want to wake up and not trust myself anymore. And I'm going to do what I got to do to sabotage myself so that I self-abandon and don't trust myself. Nobody wakes up and does that. But the environments and the people and the places and the things that we're around can either help us continue to cultivate that aspect of ourselves that we are born with, that trust ourselves, or they can allow us to be hindered by that experience and learn to mistrust ourselves. And for me, it's important that I acknowledge that for myself, because at the end of the day, that's me saying who I am at the stages of my life where I didn't trust myself is what it is, because I'm a makeup of my environment. I'm a product of the environment that I come from. And that's not to say that we can be accountable, but I feel like the accountability part comes in when I start being responsible for like my own part in that journey. But when the act of me being in the state that I am and not trusting myself is a result of my part and other people and other places and other things part, I do have to acknowledge both in the equation. And for me, one of the early things that really I saw, one of the early things that I saw in my life was how much the environment around me didn't really contribute to allowing me to trust myself. And I'm one of those people where I'm gonna talk about topics, but I'm gonna talk about it from the viewpoint and the lens in which I view the world and the world views me through, in hopes that, like, yes, whatever, if you feel like you relate to it, even if you don't look like me, cool. And if you feel like you relate with the heavy because you look like me, that's the point. That's the point. And for me, it is important that I do acknowledge how my viewpoints and how I talk about and express these things are from a lens that acknowledge my positionality in this world, because that is very important in this day and age, whether people want to acknowledge it or not. So for me, one of the things that even like motivated the actions that I took in my life when I was really young was having this understanding that I don't really live in environments where the people, places, and things around me even have trust within themselves to let me trust myself. And I feel like because we all live in this world that robs people of their own belief to trust themselves, and we rely on hierarchies of things to give people power, and that power then equating how much we put our trust in people, that robbing a lot of people of their ability to trust themselves. Because my belief and my drive to be able to trust myself has now been robbed because somebody else has also been robbed of theirs. Does that make sense? Oh my God, it feels like a whole fucking like to keep up with the conversation, but that's literally how the fucking world is. That's why I don't believe in like victimizing myself. I'm not gonna sit here and continue to be like, oh, I'm just this girl who can't trust herself, yada yada yada, and keep playing this narrative that I did this to myself. Like, girl, there's some part of it that you can be responsible for, but at the end of the day, like, a lot of the shit that happens to us is a result of these worlds and having to function in a world that is so anti-human, you know? And it's important for me to acknowledge that again. And these are the early things that I noticed in my life of like, damn, you know. And for me, I moved to the United States when I was 6 years old. And I feel like my ability to trust myself when I was younger is also even different. Like, this is when it gets juicy for me, because when we start adding like cultural elements and how our environments also dictate how we trust ourselves, like that's a cup of tea. But I will say back home in my country, in my native country, right? There was this level of trust that was given to us. But that trust came from the fact that where we lived and the people that we were around looked like us. You know, we were all of people who came from the same cultural and ethnic backgrounds. And there was that level of trust where even as kids, we were able to go out and roam the whole like town and nobody would be worried about us because there was that trust in the element of the environment. And that allowed that child to also develop trust within themselves that, hey, I am safe enough to go outside and I can trust myself in doing that. Hey, I'm safe enough to trust in myself that I can go out and explore because the environment is safe and my parents trust me, blah, 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 blah. But I feel like things started taking a different turn for me in how much I trusted myself when I moved to the United States. And also, this is the other thing. There's also trust that is given to a child, like in areas when I was back home. But I will say some of that also comes from the fact of like, not a lot of help being around. So a lot of kids might have trust to have responsibilities at an early age. And most of the time, yes, it may come from the fact that the parent can't trust that child enough to be able to handle those responsibilities at an early age. But also a lot of it is like people function as a community too and as a unit, and everybody has a role to do regardless of who you are, what you are. So there's that element where like you kind of are expected to trust in yourself and be trusted in because of that element of community. So then when you come here to the US and they have different value systems that people are functioning and basing off and relating to one another, then your relationship to how you trust yourself and how you trust the world around you and the people around you also starts to change. And so mind you, I'm going from an environment where I was looking just like everybody else. We all looked like each other. We talked like each other. We spoke the same language, even had the same religious values, cultural values, blah, 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 blah. And then you come to an environment where it's a melting pot. You have a mixture of all of these people from different vasts and walks of life intermingling with one another and blending into this melting pot with one another. And mind you, when I moved here, I moved to one of the whitest states in the United States. And majority of the time in my experiences throughout engaging with the outside world, which like started off with like elementary school and stuff when I started going to school, was from the viewpoint that majority of the time, if not all the time, I was always one or few of the black kids in the class. Everybody else was white. So in a way that kind of starts to shift and mold your own relationship to how much you trust yourself, because now you're in an environment where like you can't really rely on outside things that look like you to validate how much trust you have within yourself, because now the world around you don't look like you. It don't affirm your reality, you know? And so your relationship to trust and how much you trust yourself also starts to change. And then, you know, when we get into things like, people be like, I don't want to talk about this, but it's like you actually have to though, because these are what's shaping people's mindsets and framework into how they trust themselves. And for me, to call out somebody's lack of trust without disacknowledging the systems that play a hand in how that functions out in people's lives, it's a bullshit ass analysis to me. And that's not a way to evaluate anything. I feel like if you're going to evaluate something, look at it from the whole picture and acknowledge every element that adds and contributes to the cause of that issue and get to the root of it. I know we're not a fan of that here in the West, but we're going to have to do it, at least in my channel. So to go back to what I was talking about, one of the first few places where like my ability to trust myself started being diminished was in the education system, because not only is there nobody who looks like me, but there's also a lot of these prejudice that people have to also interrogate within their minds. And I'm talking about fucking teachers, especially back in the days where like I don't think that was filtered through. And for me, as an immigrant child coming to the United States who didn't really speak English at that time and only spoke my native tongue, and also having to learn, there's like a lot of judgment that gets placed on you that starts to diminish your own trust within yourself. But then when you look at it, it's like, wait, you're making fun of me for speaking broken English, but yet I'm the one who speaks multiple languages? Like, that was always mind-blowing to me. Like, I don't think y'all niggas is thinking. Because if you're gonna call somebody ignorant here, I think that's you. You're the one who only speaks one language. And then if I were to try and teach you anything of mine, you wouldn't even have a hard time pronouncing it. So what are you talking about? That never made no damn sense to me, you know? But then it's hard when you are faced with institutionalized racism at a young age, and then you don't speak the language to really back yourself up. And then even when you do, you can't, because all of these people's ideologies is backed up by these systems and people's fundamental beliefs. It just kind of makes you want to shut up and just stand in the corner, you know? And for a long time, I'm not going to lie, I did that. I was just I played the observer role a little bit, because I'm just kind of like, this world makes no damn sense to me. I was really, really flabbergasted, and I was really confused. And then also, this is another thing that really like broke down my ability to continue to trust myself. And for me, I'm one of those people where like, yes, love your parents and we love our parents, but at the end of the day, I don't walk around just aimlessly loving people without holding them accountable. And I can sympathize with people while at the same time holding them accountable. And for me, like, I can say, yes, I love my parents and I love my parents, but at the same time, I don't agree with the ways that they raised us. And I feel like as an immigrant child and an immigrant family, it takes a different level of skill set, even as a parent, to be able to navigate two worlds at the same time while you have children that are also first generation immigrants. Because what happens is I'm this child who has their own internal beliefs about how they relate to the world, and that's where their ability to trust themselves also comes, is how much of the outside world can also validate what I feel in my inner world. And if the environment around you is not validating that, then your ability to continue to trust your inner world and what's coming out from it is going to be hindered in its expression, because you're not even trusting it. The outside world doesn't validate that. And for me, I feel like this is where my parents played that role of, because of the propaganda we've been fed as also immigrant people, our cultural, our like integrity is going to be also with the people who in our minds we have been placed to put in positions of authority, and that we should listen and put our trust in. And majority of the time that looks like going over, or like not trusting or not believing or not taking the time to sit and have a conversation with me about things that are affecting me and feels unfair to me in my world. Because our ideologies of who we give authority to, even as parents, and parents have to acknowledge this, like, some of us are willing to listen to our teacher before our children. Some of us are willing to listen to fucking doctors before our children. Like, to me, I don't care, bro. I don't give a fuck what type of degree you have, what type of credibility or credentials you have. If a child says something, people need to learn how to obey, like, not obey, but like, trust that child. You know, I'm not gonna just trust an adult because they hold a credibility over something. I'm gonna trust my child, you know. But my parents' loyalty in a way was to the systems, was to these figures of authority. And so even if I had a concern of, like, you know, I feel like there's institutional racism in the school system, it's kind of like, no, I don't think you're not trying hard enough. Or it's like, and then at some point it just got to a point where, like, I stopped telling them things, you know? See, I stopped telling them things because it's like, well, you don't believe that I'm telling the truth, because in your mind, you're just taught to obey anybody who's old, white, and in a little position of power. Fuck. And for me, that was what the issue was. So that also contributed to another reason of why I stopped, like, trusting myself, you know? And at some point in my life, I just got to this point where I was, like, shut down. I just shut the fuck down, like, because nothing around me was affirming of my own reality. And that's the hard part, you know? Especially for Black children, and why we, at least for me, like, I'm very sensitive about, like, how we like relate to Black children. In a world like this where nothing affirms them, nothing outside of them affirms their inner world, you know? And then we expect them to do all of these great things. This is the other thing that fucking trips me up about parents too. Like, you're gonna break down every single element of who I am and what I'm about that governs my ability to trust in myself and be able to make decisions in life from this place of knowing. Like, you diminish that and beat on that so hard, yet expect me to be great. Like, girl, how the fuck is that gonna make sense? That shit never made no damn sense to me. And then it's like, when I come and tell you about my plan of, like, what I think I should do about life or how I want to approach it, yeah, so that started, like, definitely deteriorating my ability to trust myself. And I think when I got into, and for me, I don't know, at some point I started getting to this point where, like, I literally shut down when I was younger, like in my younger days, and I just betted on the future. It sounds so, like, disheartening to think about now, but it's like I completely was all like, you know what, my nervous system just shut down, and I was all like, you know what, the day that I'm able to get out of here is probably the day that I can reestablish for myself how to trust myself again. But along the way, there were decisions that I did take to be able to cultivate that for myself. And I'm not gonna lie, the one thing about living in a world that, like, conditions you in a way where you're not taught to trust yourself, like, the reason for that is because I also saw for myself how when I wasn't trusting myself and I was leaning into, like, people pleasing and you know, seeking validations from outside of me, and doing all of these things because I didn't trust myself, I started realizing how much more of a detriment that I was to myself. And there was even times where, like, I swear to God, like, you know, when you get gut feelings about stuff, but then you don't listen to it because your navigation system to your ability to trust has been so abused for so fucking long that, like, even when the signal's going off, it's kind of like a weak signal now. So it's like you feel it, but it's like you've been taught to not trust it for so long that you're just kind of like, fuck it, fuck it, fuck it, fuck it. And then you make excuses for it, you justify it. But that means that I like to think about is like, what would be the reason why a world like this would want people to function like that? But then when you start to think about it, I paid attention and look back at like what type of narrative and archetype, like we were talking about archetypes in my last video, what type of archetype I started playing because I was leading from a place of lack of trust within myself. And I started realizing, oh my God, like I'm actually a profitable person, but without realizing it. And it's like you are this, I don't know, at least for me, because I've always been really talented and gifted, but I didn't trust myself. I give away a lot of who I was to people, places, and things that didn't really deserve my time and my effort. And those are things that are gonna happen when you don't trust yourself because you're not listening to your own internal navigation. And in a world like the one we live in, you know, that is actually a good thing to do to people. It sounds so fucked up, but it's like it's a good thing to do to people because then they're not gonna have enough trust within themselves to actually realize I could actually like step into a different role for myself. I can actually do something different for myself. They're more likely to tolerate harm when you don't trust yourself than when you do. And in a world like this is how I look at it. In a world that thrives off of fucking violence, it's like, why would I want empowered people? It sounds so fucked up. Why would I want empowered people? Why would I want people who can come into a room, assess it, feel what they trust, what they feel, and then act on it? Why would I want that? I want people confused. I want people to not be able to trust themselves. I want people to still see the harm that I'm doing to them and still continue to show up to take some more. And the thing is, we can even forget the systems. There's people who literally function like the systems. There are people who act like this and bet on the fact that you don't, in hopes that you don't trust yourself. Maybe that's where my golden ticket is. That's fucking what, that's like, I can never, ever in my life wrap myself around that type of like thinking. That I only feel worthy of accomplishing things if I can put other people down. And I'm betting on their ability to not trust themselves. Like literally the other thing is like, and why I look back at some people in my community as a young child and be like, so why would you want to like rob me of this part within me that I need and is essential to how I navigate this? Like, why would you abuse that element of me? This is why, like, with some community members, I'm like, I don't believe in people, like, having people or, like, giving them, like, praise or be like, oh, that's my auntie, that's my community. Like, I don't do that just because you have a title in my life. You need to have earned it, you know? And I feel like when we just give people recognition to be in our lives when they don't even deserve it, they're gonna continue to enable shit like this in our lives. Like when I look back and be like, you know, when I look back at adults as a child and be like, you know what, the way you acted with me when I was a child and the dynamic you had with me was really harmful to my ability to trust myself. And I don't know how, as a community member or as an adult or as a parent, you're saying you want to prepare me for the real world. That's the other thing that gets me. When parents or community members or people who are acquaintances or are raising us talk about, oh, I'm trying to prepare you for the real world. And then instead of empowering you, they steal the things that are your power base from you. And then say, oh, that's me preparing you for the world. Bitch, you cut off all my supply system. Any and everything that I needed to sustain myself, you actually cut it off. But then I feel like this is where we have an environment an environment where we have people trying to coach people who don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, you yourself don't even trust in yourself, and you're here talking about, oh, this is how you should trust yourself. This is what you should do to X, Y, and Z so that I can prepare you for the world. Like, girl, you don't even trust your goddamn self. You know? But yeah, I think it was really interesting to watch and observe how much of a valuable thing you actually are when you don't trust yourself to people, you know? I think it just becomes really hard to trust yourself when you live in a world where everything around you is validated. No, don't trust yourself, you know. And also, like, I also for a long time didn't trust myself because I didn't also trust those in positions of power. And for me, I looked at, this is so interesting to look at, but it's also kind of beautiful. But like when I was younger, I also had a hard time, and you know, I'm still like working through this even as an adult, but like this idea of like, how do I step in and own my power and fully trust in that when all of the examples I have been shown of power were just harmful and evil and violent people, you know? And so for a long time, I was kind of on this journey of like reclaiming back for myself what it means to be in power, in a place of power for myself, where I'm fully trusting myself, but that idea of power is also tied to a good source, not in this like hierarchical, like I gotta one up you, I have to be cutthroat, I have to be transactional with people. Like that just never resonated with my heart. I just never felt like the type of person who like, I need to sabotage, I need to manipulate, I need to like scheme to get what I want. I feel like there's other ways and other worlds possible for me where I can still be authentic and I can be myself. And I can come from a good place without having to do all these things, and I can still get what's meant for me. But when everything around me and everyone who was in positions of power led from this place of ego and power hungry motives, it became harder to like even fully trust in this idea of trusting in myself, because that required also trusting in my own power. But the examples of power that I saw were just these detrimental as ways of relating. And so for a long time, I kept myself hidden and not trusting myself for that same reason. And I always thought like, damn, I think trusting myself and being in my power means being nasty and coming at people when they disrespect me. But I don't want to do that, because those are examples that I saw growing up and they just led to harm. Until I'm able to be at a place where I can acknowledge how to have healthy ways of relating to each other from a place of power, I was too afraid to act. Because I was also just as afraid, if not even more afraid of like recreating dynamics of harm from my lack of knowing. And so at that point in my life, it just felt better to just play it safe and play the observer role. Like, I'm just here to learn. And for a long part of my life, I played this role of being the student to life. You know, when I dropped out of college and stuff, and I was like, I'm not doing this shit no more, because this is not a place that allows me to learn about myself. You know, these places, like these institutions and these systems, breed conformity. They breed sheeps. They breed niggas just following each other without really thinking about what they're doing, you know? And I saw that be also reflected in like the way people relate to each other. And, you know, so part of also just playing the student and like the observer was being mindful and becoming aware of the dynamics that people played and why. And then also examining myself and doing that introspection work of like, okay, what role am I playing? And how did this come about? You know? And what can I do to step out of that shell and really own the ability to be able to trust myself from a place of healthy power and empowerment, you know? Without this need of like wanting up other people or having a plot, because there really is this desire of peace where my actions are coming from. The second thing that I did is I literally stopped talking and taking advice. Like, I just shut off, but part of shutting off wasn't like, there's this, you know, you can be in a trauma response where you're like shut down and you're not even functioning in your own reality. But my type of shutdown was like, I'm gonna shut off from the world in a way where I'm just protecting myself. Like, I'm not being receptive to anything that doesn't really fuel me. And that includes people, places, and things, and their opinions and their viewpoints. And I switched to being more curious about my own self and finding and aligning myself with people, places, and things that really validated my internal world and this ability to trust myself again without taking that away from me and then expecting me to trust myself, which made no fucking sense. And distancing myself. The other one was distancing myself. Sometimes you can't, like, I've always been a big believer in saying you cannot heal in the same environment you got sick in. You cannot heal around the same people that caused and created these harms, that enabled these harms. And one way that I saw I could take initiative for my life was moving away and getting the fuck out of there. And realizing that, oh, if I want to cultivate an ability to trust myself again, I need to be in environments where nobody can add their 2 cents. At least people that I know shouldn't be giving me their 2 cents, you know? And I feel like that decision should come from me if I'm going to, if I'm wanting to and hoping to learn how to trust myself again. And then ever since then on, as I was merging into my adulthood, I was kind of this journey of positioning myself in places and environments where I am centering myself as the person who is in that position to make the final decision for my life. And I think for me, that was my way of reclaiming back my own power in a way that felt unique to me without really taking it from anybody else. Because I don't really believe I need to take something from somebody to gain something for me, when everything that I need is inside of me, but I need to tap in. But I can't tap into this place that I've been taught to be abandoned from. I was taught to abandon and neglect these parts of myself, because by doing so, I become useful to other people. But when I say, you know what, I no longer want to be of use to you, I want to be useful to myself. And then whatever I can offer from a place of empowerment, then what I offer you can also empower, benefit you. But that's from my own consensual giving. But when it's not done with consent, and people want you to be quiet and not trust yourself so that they can take away from you, I don't believe in that type of fucking ways of functioning. And if you're around people like that, girl, I need you to get the fuck out. I need you to get out. That's no way to fucking live. And so I started positioning myself in places in my life where I was the I was the co-creator. I positioned myself in the co-creator of my reality. And I stopped giving that power away to people, to parents, to family members, to community members, to friends. We give our life away through all the validations that we seek from people sometimes. We be like, no, I don't really let them put their input on my life. But really, it's like, no, you kind of do though. Whenever you're seeking their validation because you don't trust yourself, that's giving your power away. So every single time I had an inclination to go to somebody and maybe ask them and really for something, I would sit with it. Like, what am I asking right now? Am I really needing somebody's assistance, or am I seeking validation right now? And if I'm seeking validation, I'll take a minute and I'll be like, you know what? What about this person and what kind of validation am I needing? And how can I give myself that? How can I self-empower myself to give myself and be the initiator and also the giver of that to myself? Because it is possible. These things that I'm seeking from other people to give to me, I'm actually subconsciously doing that because they exist inside of me, and I just don't know how to bring that out of me and give it to myself. So repositioning myself in these ways that empowered me also shifted the dynamic and how I related to my ability to trust myself again. I'll also say this. This is pretty hard to say, and it is fucked up that this is the type of reality that we live in. But there's also people in this world who bet on the fact that you don't trust yourself. And I would say this took me a long time to realize this. And, when you're a child, clearly you're in the developmental stages of your life where you're figuring these things out. And to me, as a very intelligent human being, I was involved in a lot of programs and stuff when I was younger. But the detriment of I was involved in programs and stuff when I was younger. And looking back at those times in my life where I didn't really trust myself and I was around people who took advantage of that, was really, really fucked up. And there was different stages that I had with my ability to trust myself over the years. Now, I don't really disacknowledge myself. I've learned how to understand myself in that way where I can move with a great level of trust within myself. But leading up to this moment in my life, there was levels to this shit. There was points in my life when I was younger that I didn't really trust myself or listen to inclinations or gut feelings I got about people and things. And I just kind of naively moved at things, But at the end of the day, I'm just kind of what the fuck do you expect a teenager or a young child or early adult to do? Where that's what you're cultivating. But when you do live in a world where people see maybe you're this bright, intelligent being, but you don't trust yourself, they just see that as a pond that they can keep scooping water from, And it's really fucked up because to me, it's even if you did that, I look back at some people and I'm like, cool, you might have gotten your gulps of fucking water, but also that says a lot about you. And as an adult in relationship to a child, me at that time, the fact that you used my lack of trust within me to gain whatever it is that you wanted to in that moment by thinking you were taken because I wasn't aware is pretty fucking wild to me, and that's pretty disgusting. And then there was moments in my life where like I was still not trusting myself, or like maybe like I'm hanging out with somebody and I get an inclination of like I don't think we should be around this person, or I just get some sort of feeling, or some maybe an opportunity presents itself, or maybe I've been at a job way too long, or maybe I've been entertaining a relationship longer than I should, or maybe whatever the reason might be, you know. There was a point where like I would get inclinations and like intuitive hits that are guiding me and getting me to trust myself about a situation. But there's times where I wouldn't listen, but I was doing it intentionally, you know? And this is the part where I was just kind of like, okay, I feel this, but I'm still learning about how to trust myself. So I'm going to let this play out to see if what my guts has been saying is right. And it's kind of like maybe you're in the denial stage, maybe. Maybe you're still in denial stage of like, of trusting yourself. But hey, if you feel like that's the route you need to take, of like I want to trust myself, but I also need shit to play out, so I'm gonna act like the fool here, cool, do it. I don't give a fuck, by all means. Like I'm a big fan of you know, whatever way toots your own horn, whatever drives your boat, you do that. I'm a big believer in do what works for you. Never do shit because that's just how niggas is doing. I don't give a fuck. Do what works for you, and I'm gonna do what works for me. So yeah, there was points where like and then I think to me like this part started becoming really, it kind of became comical at the same time, because yes, I was harnessing how to work with the skill set of trust. Self-trust is so big. When you're able to trust yourself, the way you move is completely different than when you don't trust yourself, you know? And there's so many ways you sabotage yourself and also give your power away when you don't trust yourself, that you see the difference in when you do trust yourself, you know? And what was also interesting was, to me, sometimes the way people move is just so like diabolical to me. I can never in my life fathom moving in such a way or doing what some people have done to people, you know? So sometimes it's kind of nice to just sit back and watch how the plot is gonna play out. Like, and then at some point I was like, okay, I'm really starting to see and trust that I could trust myself, because the inclinations I get about certain things, I am trusting it, you know, and I can see that because I've let it play out. But it started becoming a thing of like, wow, people really act like this? People really do this? You know? So that was really interesting to watch, of like just letting shit play out, where I'm like, damn, so this is how you move. And then there's TikToks that be like, oh, when you just start observing people as an archetype, whatever, and start taking notes on them like a case study, bro. Like, what can you do at some point, you know? And that's the thing that I don't get about fucking users in this world, is you don't think the shit you do in the dark never gonna come to the light. That's the thing that blows my mind about people. Like, and why I don't believe in scheming, bro. Whatever you do, at least around me, whatever you do in the dark is always gonna come to light. I don't give a fuck how good you think you hide it. It's always gonna come to light. So why not just be genuine? Why not just be authentic? To me, I feel like it's like people who lie and scheme and manipulate, they convince people that like, oh, I don't have time on my hands, so I gotta do this quicker. When really it's like, no, nigga, you actually got a lot of time on your hands. You know how long and how much effort it takes to lie and plot and scheme? If you really cared about your time, you would be like, you know what, I'm gonna just be honest and truthful. I'm like, to me, I'm like, I can't keep up with lies. That's the thing I don't like about lying. I hate liars and I don't like lying, because what's the point? And how many brains do you have, bro, to keep up with all these lies? Like, if you needed all them fucking tabs open, just go open tabs on a computer. Just go play Family Feud or something, you know? Instead of playing games with people. Like, go play games with yourself. With people like that, it's like, don't waste people's times. You can waste your own goddamn time, but don't waste people's times. But yeah, just noticing that in people is also pretty interesting, when they have been betting a lot on your lack of trust, you know? Because at some point, it's like people start also recognizing your own pattern of like, oh, she don't really trust herself, or like, I could just get over on her. But to me, it's like, maybe when I was younger, but at this point in my life, it's not that you can't get over on me, nigga. It's just funner to watch you play it all out. It's just really funny to watch you play it all out. And to me, it's like, I have no desire to move in such a way. I don't move shiesty. I don't care to move shiesty because I'm not in a place of lack, you know? People who come from states of lack are the only ones who feel the need to move shiesty. And also bet on people like people who don't trust themselves to come around in their life, because that's the perfect playground for them to play and plot their games. And it works really well with them because, you know, the excuses and the lies they make are going to be a good compatible thing to somebody who doesn't trust themselves, because they're willing to be gullible, you know? They're like, they're just like, I don't know, I don't know. When really somebody who knows themselves and trusts themselves, they're like, no, that ain't it. And people who manipulate and scheme don't like that, you know? So that's why you're a good bet, bro. If you don't trust yourself, you're a good bet. You're like it's like, imagine a nigga wanting to go fishing and you're the perfect pond that has hella fishes. And your fishes are gullible. Like, they see the little hook and they're like, I got dinner today. But they don't realize they the dinner. Yeah, that's how it is being in a relationship with people like that. So, and then at some point you kind of need the silence. I will say, solitude is very important, especially when it comes to cultivating your relationship to trusting again. And there was moments in my life, and I'm probably in that season right now where like, I'm in complete chosen solitude, you know, and the solitude and the loneliness of it all doesn't feel lonely. It actually feels clarity. There's like a lot of clarity. That's why a lot of people, they're like, why are you so alone? Why are you so by yourself? But I genuinely like being by myself because it's a good like time and a good framework to be able to develop my ability to trust myself and be in communication with myself, you know? And I'm not saying that I'm somebody who's always by themselves, but I'm saying cultivate time to just be by yourself, you know? And turn shit off. And when I say by yourself, you can't be like by yourself, but you're on your phone, you're distracted. You need to like literally shut shit off and sit with yourself. When I first moved into this apartment, for the first 2.5 years of my life, I didn't have any TV, any electronics other than my phone. And I had like a flip phone. So it's like I can't even get on like social media and stuff. And I wasn't able to watch stuff, and it really like allowed me to just do nothing but sit with my own goddamn self, you know? But in that way, I was able to really listen to my inner voice deeper and strengthen that tool, like skill set. Because all of this is really a skill set, you know? And like kind of like a job, if you don't have a certain skill set, people could prey that on you. Well, can they? Some people can, but like, what if you don't have it as a skill set, then some people just see it as like a lack. But it's something that's developable. You know, you could develop it as long as you're willing to put into that work, you know? Oh my god, this is such an interesting topic. I'm only laughing because like people make me laugh. I feel like it is really hurtful when you're maybe experiencing these things, but that's why I always say, and I'm a big believer in why I want this to be the key takeaway, because this is such a tricky topic, and it could feel really like triggering. Like it feels triggering for me, like having to think about people using your lack of trust to one up you when really they just like made themselves look like a fool. But you know, the fact that even people would try to react or act like that with you is even in itself painful. And I don't know what people's experiences are that they had from moments where they didn't trust themselves. So I do want to sympathize with that and say that that's not an easy thing to experience. But like I said, I'm one of those people where I can acknowledge my pains and the harm that has been done to me, but also I don't like to victimize myself. You know, I like to lead from a place of empowerment. And part of my way of doing that is pointing the finger back. Like if harm was done to you, you don't shrink yourself and be like, oh, I need to minimize who I am because X, Y, and Z happened to me. No. Point the finger back at who the fuck did that shit to you. You know? And it's important that like with this conversation, you don't self-blame yourself. Of like, damn, you see, this is what I get for not listening to myself. No, baby, you are a product of this world. This is what the system breeds. So the fact that you're actually even thinking about wanting something different for yourself and wanting different ways to relate to yourself and even want to develop these skill sets to better yourself and to prep yourself that's empowering, you know? And you're saying, hey, I understand these things happened to me, but I didn't do this to myself. These things were done to me, but I'm willing to do something about it, you know? And move forward with my life in a way that serves me and is beneficial to me, instead of being stuck in the complacency of whatever the fuck that wanted me to do. And also, this is the thing, bro. With people who bet on you not trusting yourself, they're gonna keep taking away from you. And the point of taking from you and is to disempower you, you know? Because at the end of the day, when you really think about it, this is what I don't understand of people who move like this, is you may feel like you're winning by gaining things from my lack of trust, but at the end of the day, the source of your own success is me at the end of the day. So the minute I start to wake up to that and also realize, hey, I'm actually in a position where I can cultivate this ability to cultivate self-trust within myself and be able to assess situations and people differently, and I'm able to do that, and I do that, you have no access to this thing that was allowing you to have the success that you thought you had by taking it from me to begin with, you know? So it's kind of like, what did that do for you, Lois? What did that do for you? You are better off cultivating your own ability to trust yourself. Because that's the other thing about people like that. They will love to pose as, oh, I trust myself. I know who I am, blah, 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 blah. If you did, why are you taking from me? If you did, why are you sabotaging me? If you did, why are you using my moment of vulnerability to gain one up on me right now? I thought you trust yourself, you know? And it's like, you really don't. That's why you need to take from somebody else. And that's the thing that most fucking manipulators and schemers and all these other whack-ass people don't really understand, is that you're the one at a place of lack, you know? And not being able to trust yourself is not really a lack, but it feels like a lack because you're not using it to your advantage, you know? That's what it is. But it's just a skill set you haven't learned yet, or it has been robbed from you, that you can gain back and learn, and you will be able to do that, you know? But don't let the people who misused you and abused you in those low moments of yourself continue to steal your power. That power always been yours, you know? And you can always take that shit back. And the minute you do, they really ain't got shit. So don't sit too much in the wallow that they created, because that's what they want. That's what they want. So take your shit back and be like, I'm gonna have to level up. And level up on them hoes, you know? And keep it pushing. But yeah, this video is long. I might continue a part 2 if I feel like it, but I'm gonna just leave it at that. So continue to trust yourselves and know that it's a process, okay? Toodles, badoodles.